Would the real Brian Schottenheimer, passing or running guy, please stand up? Well, good Tuesday morning, friends. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. I hope you guys are having a great Taco Tuesday. Let's get open for business and let's wake up the football gods. Man, time just keeps on flying by so quickly. It is already the 7th of February, and we have the Super Bowl in just 5 days from now. The season will be over, but then the rebirth starts on the 21st of February with the beginning of franchise tagging, and the Dallas Cowboys have decisions they have to make. We franchise tagged Dalton Schultz last year. The tag number would be somewhere around, I think, $13 million. Long-term estimates for him would be a $15 million contract. Will they transition tag, franchise tag him? I don't think so. The bigger question will be, will they with Tony Pollard, who currently is injured, coming back from a broken leg? More than likely, I think that they will be trying to hold on to Tony Pollard one way or another. And injuries don't seem to preclude the Cowboys from getting you a contract. So now the question is, what kind of offense can we actually expect? I want to play this clip early this morning because they're talking about Brian Schottenheimer and when we played the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs. And in that game, the Cowboys ended up basically being a brick wall to the running game, and it seemed like the Seattle Seahawks continued to run the ball. Let's listen in, and then we will respond afterwards because I want to get to the point, but this needs to kind of settle in first.
What do we learn about him from his time there? Well, I think there's some wariness on the part of Cowboys fans because they remember that 2019 wildcard game where Seattle just kept running into a brick wall. I was very frustrated watching the Seahawks. But I'll say this, playing for a defensive-minded head coach who very much so loved to run the football then, I'm not sure how much of that is directly a reflection on Schottenheimer. I'll also add, in 2018 and 2019, Seattle had the 8th and then 5th most efficient offense in football. They were very successful during the early part of his tenure with Russell Wilson. So, he does have some track record of success. I do still, however, expect the offense with him to be fairly run-heavy, big emphasis on play action. Yeah. But ultimately, I think we all know this is Mike McCarthy's show right now, so there's probably a limit to the influence that Schottenheimer will have.
Yeah, shout out to Shefty. Like Kara Lawson said, do hard better. I like this for the Cowboys. I said 2 weeks ago, if they don't hire an offensive coordinator, you might as well fire yourself. I think two things that Brian Schottenheimer will bring. One, a little bit more of the inside zone run game. That is so much easier for Dak, in my eyes, to build the play action off of rather than a little bit more of the outside zone. Schotty's always been more of an inside zone guy. And the second thing, and this is the most meaningful, stopping the standstill passing game.
Oh,
so often it was stop routes,
hook
routes, curl routes, hitch routes for the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are going to see way more of a passing game that keeps receivers on the move. The challenge for Dak is to match that accuracy and ball placement with that. But that offense pass game was stagnant both literally and metaphorically. And I think Schotty coming along, a little bit more of the movement-based passing game is going to be a good thing for them.
Yes, Lord.
Yeah, thank you, Jesus. Two things need to be the focus, man. One, the personnel. All right, you got some issues in your backfield. Tony Pollard, free
agent, right?
You got to try to figure out what Zeke is. Like, is Zeke really impacting this team the way that you want him to?
Worth the money, thing.
Well, I'm sure Zeke has the understanding that he's going to have to renegotiate some money if he's going to stay in Dallas. And the other part is, when you think about Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, and then Mike McCarthy has brought Brian Schottenheimer up, will this be in unison, or will this be Mike McCarthy dictating to Brian Schottenheimer what actually needs to happen on the field? I think you do this in tandem, and obviously he's been within that building, so there's some type of working relationship. But to your point, Dan, like, I agree with all of that. The thing that I was most frustrated about last year, Dak standing in the center of the pocket, I said it 1,000 times. And the other thing is they got to get better personnel. Dallas is not.
Thank you.
They do not have enough firepower offensively to compete in this league to win a
like
Super Bowl.
Second
Man,
or
receiver.
third receiver. You think
And
they need a legit two?
They need a
Outside of
legit.
Gallup?
They need a legit two, but they
100%.
also don't. You don't know what their backfield is going to be.
Right, because you don't know about Pollard, and we got to see what Zeke does. All right, so Dak threw 15 interceptions, tied for the most in the NFL. If you're Brian Schottenheimer, what's the first thing that you do with Dak to try to get him corrected?
I don't harp on the interceptions. I just think it was a bad year for Dak Prescott. I don't
Agreed.
believe that's who he is. I think that you sit down and watch some of them and say, hey, you walk me through this, talk me through this, what was kind of going through your mind. But this is not a pattern of behavior for Dak Prescott in his career. I think you sit down one time, you talk about it, you have a really good long meeting, conversation, 4, 5, 6 hours, however long, and then you move past it. That's not who Dak Prescott is.
Well, it's a long meeting, but
But you figure it out. You know, Dak
No, I
had so
hear
many
you.
interceptions last year off basic plays.
Right.
Yeah.
That I don't think that's who he is.
I agree. I like that you say it's probably an aberration. All right, to another quarterback. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers a little bit.
Okay, so let's go through a couple things. Because, see, here's what happens is you get a whole lot of Dak. Oh, that's going to be a long meeting talking about Dak's interceptions and stuff. Okay. But you got a couple of things, a couple of insights. You know, I always like to hear this because this is the fuel that feeds the haters because they come through and they digest exactly that. In that, they talk about, well, Dak Prescott's got 15 interceptions, and that's the takeaway that people have. But you heard Swagoo talking about lack of talent. Lack of talent. And you heard even my man say, you mean they can get a legitimate number two? Actually admitting that Michael Gallup was not considered a real number two this past year. I have hope and pray that Michael Gallup does get back to where he was before, that more time working with this injury and things will help. But you talk about, Dan Orlowski, who is famous for,
can take numbers and skew them any way we want. We often can take numbers and we'll fit them into the narrative that we want to try and paint. And I probably am guilty of this.
Yeah, fit the narrative that they want him to fit it into. You heard him actually talk about the types of routes and things that we do. Sitting back in the middle of the pocket, throwing to guys that are stationary. Throwing to guys that are stationary. So we have a quarterback who's staying still, throwing to a receiver who stops. Let me ask you this. Does that make any sense to you? To have a stationary target at quarterback, one who actually plays well on the move. Bootlegs, play action, getting outside of the pocket, hitting guys on the move. Second part, getting the receivers moving to get yards after the catch. If you think about what Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson, I want you to understand, is not real tall. You know, they list him at 6 foot or 6'1". Russell Wilson is not. He's shorter. He's about my height. And one of the things that they did with Russell Wilson was always moving him around in the pocket to get him past the big offensive lineman and defensive lineman. You'd always see, when Russell Wilson before Denver, you would always see Russell Wilson with the ball in his hand on the move, making a great play. Because a couple things happen when you do that. One, you're buying yourself more time. Two, you're giving yourself a clear view of the field. And three, that gives an opportunity for those receivers to be coming across, and you're hitting them in stride where you have an advantage. Don't have throwing the ball to stationary targets where the defensive players can get a beat on them. And that's where I think that this offense is going to use the things that are strengths to Dak Prescott. You can have an idea of what you want to do. You understand what I'm saying? But if you don't have the tools to do what that is, it's not going to work. For example, Joe Gibbs was part of Air Coryell. He came to Washington and wanted to run that system, which was, we're throwing the ball deep. We're using the tight ends. The running back is more of a screen player. He got to Washington and didn't have that personnel to fit it. So he devised an offense that would use the people he had. A bruising running back. He took the fullback and made him an H-back, which was kind of a hybrid tight end fullback. Catch the ball, he could block, but it was a one-back set, and he rode it to 3 Super Bowls. So this is where forever the Cowboys have not used the talents that are in front of them or used the strengths. Dak Prescott's strengths: play action, bootlegs, moving the pocket, using 12 personnel in the running game, hitting guys in stride. And more times than not, Kellen Moore and his offense weren't using those things. So this is where I have hope that the Cowboys with Brian Schottenheimer are going to use this. And it's going to be, instead of, Mike McCarthy side-eyeing Kellen Moore and saying, I'm going to have to sit into the meetings a little bit more and try and direct, this will be a complete, cohesive message and style of play that Mike McCarthy has Brian Schottenheimer, who's been in the building for a year, understanding the players we have and the system that Mike McCarthy wants to do, that this should be a seamless transition to the team. So I don't know that bringing in somebody else who doesn't have that knowledge of being with the team would have been a better move. I think it's a good move. Time will tell. But none of this means anything unless the Cowboys do better at the receivers. You got to have more weapons. You must have more weapons than what you have right now. All right, good people, we're going to keep it short this morning because I'm going to hit the road. We're going down to work on the red brick house to start getting that back in working order. It's still a little bit chilly and stuff, so I don't know how much we're going to be able to do in there, but hopefully I can get the chimney off and work on framing the upstairs. Got to get under the cellar there and frame up, and I know it's going to be cold up in there, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that or not, but we're going to wait and see how much we can get. But as always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys, as well as you ladies.
Our coach here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report.
You did one hell of a job, and the only thing else I got to say is, high five!